So the weather, it's a little bit snowier since I was here last. Last time we were here was the winter camping adventure. We got a foot more snow now, and we're just getting the cabin all warmed up with our propane heater. So it's the Martin propane heater. I want to tell you a little bit more about it and some of the pros and cons of it that I've discovered over the last 10 months or so. Extremely deep powder that we have here right now. It's probably about 2 or 3 feet in the bush. It's a little bit tricky for walking around, but it's so beautiful and peaceful out today. Of course, the birds greeted me here as usual. So that was pretty nice to have a little welcoming committee. They're really hungry. You know, they've stashed thousands of seeds that I've given them over the season, but it's nice just to have a fresh meal. So we just got here and it's -10 with 16% humidity. I'll just show you how long it takes to heat up. With a setting for the Martin heater on high, it's taken about 3 hours for the entire cabin to heat up to 17 Celsius from -10. Now keep in mind, everything was frozen inside. Everything was at -10. The walls, the cupboards, everything in here was frozen. So that's why it takes so long to heat up. So definitely take that into account when you consider this heater. The space for our cabin is 240 square feet. So as the unit senses the temperature in the room is getting up to what you desire, it sort of scales back on the gas usage. When it reaches temperature, it will shut off and just the pilot will go. Here, for example, it's reached temperature and the pilot's just remaining on. One drawback, which I think is the same for a lot of propane units, is that when you first get to the cabin, you must purge the air from the line and so that the gas can get to the cabin, the unit here. So basically it involves, turning it to pilot and holding this down for about 30 to 40 seconds and then, using the igniter about every 5 seconds or so to get the pilot lit. Once the pilot's lit, it's no big deal. You basically just turn the knob around and more gas will come into the unit and it'll light up really well. So when you're away from the cabin for a while, it is a little bit of a pain to purge the air from the line and ignite it, but really it doesn't take that long to get things going. And, you really don't have to purge the line if you've only been away for a few days or whatnot. It's mainly if you've been away for 2, 3, 4 weeks and you come back to try to turn the unit on, it's going to take you a little bit of time and that's to be expected. However, I really like how it's really quick and easy to start, especially, it's a lot easier, I think, than having a wood stove. We have a lot of family members that might want to come up and visit, and this is so much easier for them to get going versus, chopping some wood, trying to get the wood stove going. So thinking of everybody, this is probably the best choice for all of us. It's an attractive unit. It fits right next to the wall. There's about 1 inch clearance from the combustible wall surface. And what's really nice is that it also has very small offsets from other, features of the house, like from windows and from the soffit and from, plugs outside. So that made it really attractive, that it could be really flush against the wall, out of our way, especially when we don't use it, obviously, other than sort of late fall to very early spring. So we didn't want to be tripping over a wood stove, for example, during the off season. I did consider a wood stove way back when, but originally we built this cabin, we didn't really have a wood stove in mind because we didn't want to stay here in the winter, but that quickly changed, of course. So, in terms of the wood stoves, we looked into those little ship stoves, the Cub series, the Cub Mini, but they weren't ULC approved and CSA approved, so that meant we couldn't get away with the minimal offsets from combustibles. The ventilation pipes were about 3 inches in diameter, sometimes 4 inches, so that's really narrow. You're really going to have to clean those out very frequently, or you can get a lot of creosote buildup in there, and then you could have a real problem. So that wasn't attractive to me, nor was chopping wood into these little itty-bitty sections to stick in these smaller ship stoves every few hours. That just really didn't do the trick for me. With this unit, it's thermostat controlled, and so I don't have to babysit it. Basically, when the temperature hits where I want it to be on this unit, it'll shut down and the pilot will stay on. If it senses it's getting cooler in the cabin, it ignites again. So that's really nice. It's a hands-off thing. I don't really have to babysit it like I would a wood stove. It's quiet and it doesn't stink, which is another huge advantage over our old kerosene heater. The kerosene heater would create a black soot on all surfaces in the cabin, even in your nostrils if you spent any time here. It smelled really bad. This unit is directly vented to the outdoors, so minimal worries for carbon monoxide unless, say, a gasket inside failed. Also, no odor, except for when you initially buy the unit and you have to burn off the oils that they put in there at the manufacturing plant. But it's quiet, doesn't stink, and we still have carbon monoxide detectors in the cabin, even though it's a low risk with this unit. You always should have one set up, because if something was to fail inside and there was to be a leak of the carbon monoxide, that could be a fatal mistake. So I'm really happy with this unit over the kerosene heater we used to have. So the nice thing about this unit is the front comes off, and then you can kind of access the inner burners in the pilot and things like that. So we'll see how easy this is to take apart. I'm not convinced it's that easy to take apart and clean. The manufacturer recommends every year to kind of go through, vacuum it out, check everything, check the seals, check the gasket, which is a really good idea. But it kind of, I don't really want to have to unscrew it from the wall and kind of, get into the back guts of it. So I'm hoping that going through the front will be easy enough. Probably just unscrewing a bit of that front glass there once I'm inside the unit. Definitely want to vacuum out those little pieces right there. I think that will make the flames a little bit more uniform. A drawback obviously is getting a professional in to do the gas connection. That I did not feel comfortable doing myself. So last spring we had someone in to do that for us, which was costly. In our area it is quite costly to do that. So yeah, it's just a choice we made. But I'm certain if you were very competent in gas connections and fittings that you'd be able to do it yourself. A major drawback obviously is a dependency on propane, and that's of course propane prices, availability, they can fluctuate. So that's one thing that you have to take into consideration if you're looking at propane or even a natural gas heater like this one. Town isn't very close from here, so you have to disconnect the tanks and take them in to get filled and drive them back. And obviously there's risk with that, but it's not too bad. If we were here more often than we are, then I would definitely go for the larger 100-pound tanks, or even larger than that, because then I would probably put in like a propane fridge and a little stove or something like that, and I'd probably get quite a large tank set up to do that. So we'll see how it goes. It does chew through a fair amount of propane. I think about a liter an hour when you have it really turned up on high. Obviously when the pilot's on, it doesn't consume much gas at all. If it gets really cold out here and you're in the -20s, -30s, this is running an awful lot, and you can expect it's going to go through a fair amount of propane. So, but you'd go through a fair amount of wood, I guess, for your wood stove as well. So you just got to think about that. If propane becomes less available or more expensive, then we're going to have to revisit this idea. This unit is about 80% efficient, which is a little bit of a drawback. So really, when it says it's a 20,000 BTU unit, you're only getting about 16,000 BTUs out of the unit on max. So that's a bit of a drawback. When you're looking at natural gas furnaces and things like that, we're talking in the high 90% efficiency. So you're not, you're going to go through a bit more gas to produce the heat that you want. So let's head out now outside. I want to show you what happens when one of my propane tanks runs dry, and I don't want the unit to stop working. Let's go take a look. So there's the exhaust vent. It's completely vented to the outdoors, so that's great. We don't have to crack a window. And it gets really, really hot, so you gotta be very careful obviously, but it's perfect. It has to be a specified distance from our open soffit, but we have more than enough clearance there. And there's the window, so you can see the distance there. One thing with the installation with this that I found really challenging was you had to make sure to have it angled in a downward fashion so that, if it rains, it's not going to roll into your unit. So I found that really challenging to get that lined up from the inside, and I still cover it, when we're not here, because I don't want insects to get in there, and I don't want snow or rain to drip in there, because I really don't trust the angle that we put it in. I measured it, seems like it should be okay, but I don't know. I think if there's a driving rain, I'm afraid that it would rain and go into the unit. Also, I'm really not a fan of the larger holes on the exhaust vent. I realize that's got to be there, but we do have a fair amount of bees and wasps and hornets and other insects that would very easily crawl through that mesh. So I'm not really sure what the solution is there. I don't want to put a lighter mesh over top. God forbid I do something to the ventilation capabilities, but if you guys have any ideas, let me know. We have two 40-pound tanks back here, and this one, the very first tank, is almost empty. I have it on an auto switchover regulator right here, so that's very handy. For when the gas runs out, it'll just start running on the other tank, and we'll go from there. As we spend more time here, these tanks will definitely be switched out to something larger, at least 100-pounders on each one. We could possibly get a larger tank in here, but I have to sort of see the usage that we have over the coming year, and we'll go from there. You can see right now that I have it set up to draw from the tank on the right, and beneath the knob there, it looks like the tank is empty. You can see a red bar. Let's show you how easy it is with the auto switchover regulator to switch to your second tank. So it's drawing from the right tank and it's empty. How is the propane heater even working? Well, I've got an auto switchover regulator, and what it's doing now, even though I have it set to pull from the right tank, because it's empty, it's actually pulling from the left one on this side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change out the one propane tank that's empty. It's really easy to do that without interrupting service to the heater in the cabin with this regulator. So let's do it. So you want to make sure that you turn this over now to the left tank, and what this is going to do is shut off the gas into this pigtail right here so that I can take this tank off. So I'm just going to close it up and unscrew it. Oh, it's probably frozen on pretty well. Didn't take me too long to get that off. I sort of warmed it out with my hands, and I used this to kind of loosen the connection. So we can take that into town, and now the heater's working solely on the other tank there that's full, and you don't have to worry about leakage from that other pigtail. You can see now that I've switched it to the left tank that the indicator underneath the knob is now black. Just to show you, I put a little bit of saliva on there and it's not bubbling. So there's definitely no leakage from the second pigtail when you do the switchover. But just remember, the tanks won't automatically switch over unless you open the valves on both of them at all times, so that when your one tank runs out, the unit will draw from the second tank. If you forget to do that, you will lose fuel to the system and experience an interruption in your heating. It is an expensive unit, and hooking up the gas to it is an expensive endeavor as well. So you really want to be 100% committed to this this type of heater before getting one, because it's not without expense, obviously. The unit itself, the installation, well, we did ourselves, but the gas installer, professional gas installer, comes, you know, at a pretty hefty price when you're sort of away from town, and also you're going to be buying, you know, your tanks and the propane to fill them. So that can be a drawback for sure, is the costliness of trying to set up this unit. Environmental advantage to having one of these units is they burn relatively clean compared to a wood stove. I mean, wood stove produces out a lot of chemicals into the environment that can be harmful, and this unit obviously is a lot cleaner than burning wood. Recently, Montreal had a smog alert in place over the winter, and a lot of it had to do with everybody's wood stoves were all fired up during the cold snap. So people were, you know, requested to kind of dial back on their wood stove usage because it was creating a smoggy effect within the city. So that's something else to keep in mind if you're looking for something that's a little bit more environmentally conscious in terms of what you're you know, producing and leaching into the air around the cabin. The propane stove beats out the wood stove. One thing I am missing with this propane stove is the ambiance of having a nice wood fire. The really dry heat you get with a wood stove, you don't necessarily get with this. This will dry out the cabin, but it's not as dry as, say, a wood stove. And, you know, of course, the smell of the wood stove is wonderful, and seeing all the flame action of a wood stove is great. You do get a bit of a fix here because you can see the flames through this unit. We paid a little bit extra to get the glass plate on the front so you can see the flames. So, you know, that's nice, but really it doesn't compare to a wood stove when it comes to the ambiance of that kind of heater. This is what the heater looks like on high. It's a completely off-grid model in that it doesn't need power. It just operates just with the propane and the heater itself. But as you can see up here, I've rigged up a little fan above the heater to blow the heat around. I might actually make a little shelf up here to put the fan in the future. I just find it circulates it around a little bit more. You don't have to do that, obviously. The heater itself, you know, it heats up the cabin really nicely, but sometimes you just want to speed things along and push the warm air around. So we're gonna have to figure something out for long term for a fan above the heater. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and learned a bit more about the Martin propane heater and what I like and what I don't like about it after having it for several months. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down below. I hope you guys have a great week as always. Take care.